I sense a great disturbance in Morghur's realm, as if thousands of Sigmarite and Ulrican worshippers cheered in unison as the Empire received yet another buff. They might have felt a little bit left in the dust in the wake of substantial changes to combat on Game 2's release, but they have consistently received help over the last several patches and seem to finally be returning to form. So today, Boris Todbringer and his state troops will face off against the Primal Fury of the Drakkwald, and in my humble opinion, Boris is quietly one of the most well-rounded lords in the game, with regeneration, a great terror-causing mount, and the ability to constantly debuff enemies with the White Cloak of Ulrich and crush the weak. But it isn't Boris who's been getting all the love recently, it's been much of the supporting cast. Handgunners got additional missile damage, and finally, their line of sight issues that prevented them from firing were fixed. Hellblaster Volley Gun became cheaper with better damage output, and probably the most eye-popping change this whole patch was the buff to Halberdiers, the frontline mainstays of the Empire, whose charge defense against large was upgraded to charge defense against all, which completely nullifies enemy charge bonuses from the front while braced. Now, expert charge defense isn't as good as it was in previous games, where it would actually reflect charge bonus back at attackers. It doesn't do that anymore, but being able to eliminate the charge bonus of anything in the game makes them a much more attractive option on that front line. And supporting them are Zintler's Reichsguard, hiding in the woods, being a bunch of sneaky boys in the back. And this matchup has flip-flopped pretty dramatically over the course of games 1 and 2, with the Empire being pretty dominant, I think, for much of game 1's life cycle, and the Beastmen roaring back to the front of the pack with all the changes to combat in game 2. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how the meta develops, but I think the change to Halberds is particularly noteworthy in this specific matchup because it directly counters the charge bonus aspect of Primal Fury. With that said though, few factions in the game can flank quite like the Beastmen. You just saw the Sons of Goros and Warhounds, who can put a massive amount of pressure on the Empire back line. There is a Lore of Deathcaster, and of course, the Butchers of Kalkengard, the angriest cows you've ever seen in your life, and if Chick-fil-A ever came to the Warhammer world, they'd probably be their mascots, I think, after they whipped up a few human dishes for the menu, of course. Morghur the Corruptor is here, with his Chaos Spawn summons, supported by some Minotaurs with great weapons, and they have a Gore Herd front line, and out on the flanks, more Centaurs and Warhounds to provide some of that mobility and extra pressure in the back. So, now the first order of business as the Empire is to try and equalize those numbers a bit before melee begins in earnest, and the Hellblaster Volley Gun is gotten quite a bit better at that recently, popping Ungor Herd like little pimples that they are, but once more important stuff gets into range, like the Gore Herd, switch targets to those, and actually this thing functions quite well against cavalry and monstrous infantry too. Only issue it has is that unlike other pieces of artillery, it still fires at the edge of a unit, which means units like Minotaurs only have 1 or 2 models taking damage per volley, which is good because it kills those models, the ones that it hits. The bad thing about it is that a lot of the shots will miss directly after it dies. So you'll see we're firing into the flank of this Minotaur unit. Pretty much the only model taking damage right now is the one on the far left, and it goes down, but then half of the volley ends up completely missing it, which is a little bit annoying, but apparently Duck said that it does more damage that way when it fires at the edge for the Hellblaster Volley Gun specifically. But a nice little ambush coming from Zintler's Reichsguard there will catch those Centaurs completely flat-footed, which is the benefit of keeping one unit of cavalry out in the open, because a lot of times your opponent will think that's the only unit of cab you have. We have dealt with the Warhounds in the back, and some Ungor moving around that boulder trying to get into the flank of our Halberdiers and prevent them from getting off their charge defense against all. Boris Todbringer coming over with his Crush the Weak passive, -5 melee defense, -4 LD, and -5 melee attack will stack on top of the White Cloak of Ulrich, which will lower the speed of all nearby units by 6% and lower their melee attack by 9, so that is insanely good. Problem is, Fate of Boring is on the field. Fate of Buna will do a number on Zintler's Reichsguard there, and we'll get a look at the charge defense against all in action as the Gore Herd charge directly into the front of the Halberdiers. And yes, we will take some damage off the charge simply because they have weapon damage, and those attacks will still go through, but their charge bonus will be completely nullified from the passive of Primal Fury. And we have a really good line of sight to fire in with our Hellblaster Volley Gun to either get into the flank of that big blob of Gore Herd or actually go for those Minotaurs. But the Chaos Spawn has been summoned in the back as well, and we're having to commit a lot to this left flank to prevent the Minotaurs from completely rolling us over there. Boris doing a good job or he was, until he decided to pull away because there were so many Minotaurs nearby, making sure that they couldn't completely break through. But that Spearman unit probably not going to have a good time, and I will have to cede my left flank for now. But the Chaos Spawn are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, which is shut down the handgunners in the back lines, and the Sons of Goros with a beautiful charge into the center of them as well. Boris comes back, and with one swipe of that mighty Griffin's Claws, 3 or 4 of them will go down, and with a rear charge from the Reichsguard, we will shatter them completely. Amazing engagement right there, and that is a very important unit. The Sons of Goros now off the field. But the Empire left flank has broken now, and 2 Minotaurs, including those Butchers of Kelkengard with their regeneration, are free in the back lines. Meanwhile, on the Empire right flank, Halberdiers are holding exceptionally well right now against a lot of melee power. I mean, Gorherd aren't the best infantry in the game, but they can typically trade pretty well against Halberds. They're not doing as well as they used to, though, because of that charge defense. Chaos Spawn still being a terror in the back, though. And Boris, terror routing Minotaurs with great weapons, who took a lot of damage from those Hellblaster volley guns on the way in. And the Reichsguard supporting very nicely. Lord of Lifecaster on nearby health support, dropping some Earthbloods to make sure that everything stays in the fight. And Chaos Spawn jibbing the handgunners, and this has been a fantastic summon unit of them. They've disrupted 3 of those handgunner units and are now only down to half health. So when I had to commit my cavalry, that was a problem because it left those Chaos Spawn open to do a lot of annoying things in the back there, and I'm not getting anywhere near as many shots as I would like. But the Butchers of Kelkengard have taken a lot of damage from the Hellblaster volley gun as well. They've been pinned by Boris, and Boris hasn't taken a lot of damage at all with that regeneration and Lore of Life stacking up on top of each other, and just with the debuff that the Griffin has with that Crush the Weak and White Cloak of Ulrich passive. Beastmen aren't doing a lot of damage to him, which is very good for us, as the Reichsguard roar in from behind and slaughter those Gorherd with a fantastic hammer and anvil. Morghur the Corruptor, though, using a whip for some reason. That is embarrassing. Honestly, that needs to get changed. I have no idea why that animation is still in the game. He is not Khazrak the One-Eye. He does not have a whip, and though he is the bringer of change, it is not very logical that his Staff of Corruption would turn into Khazrak's whip. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. That's a janky-ass charge from Zintler's Reichsguard right there. I'm not sure what happened there. They looked really awkward. Either way, they're gonna slaughter those Ungor herd who are pretty much isolated out there. And though they do have a bonus for slaughter, should not perform very well against heavily armored knights. And that rear charge from the other unit of Reichsguard have really carved the path of destruction in the Beastmen back lines and allowed some of those Halberdiers to get free and move on to other engagements. But that Fate of Buna, Fate of Boring, has done a number on the cavalry here, and that's gonna hurt. Looks like another one's coming now too. Zintler's Reichsguard took the first. These Reichsguard will take the second, and though they were about 2,400 health, that will quickly drop to below 1,000, and they're gonna lose a bunch of their killing power and their leadership as those numbers drop precipitously there. Not good. Very annoying spell, but it's in the game, and I don't blame anybody for using it because it's really damn good at deleting cavalry units. So, Halberdiers, well, I blame them a little bit. Halberdiers are holding the line for now, but Chaos Spawn, their charge should be nullified there, but with the Gorherd supporting and Morghur the Corruptor also in that fight, I don't think those Halberdiers will be around for long once the Corruptor gets nearby. But more Halberdiers streaming forward, and Gorherd trying to put pressure on those handgunners who really haven't had a lot of time to fire this game. And that is one of the problems with bringing handgunners in this matchup. It can be very hard to protect them against the Beastmen and all their fast movers. Nice charges from what remains of both Reichsguard into the front of the Gorherd, and Crush the Weak and the White Cloak of Ulrich debuffing a huge swath of the Beastmen line here, and Earthblood on top of everything will really help buff up those Halberdiers and the Spearmen and Boris as well. Butchers of Kelkengard are free, though. They are back into the fight. Their regen has gotten them pretty close to half HP, because they are at 6 models right now, I believe. And the terror they cause will make short work of those handgunners who again have to retreat. But Boris is on the prowl, and the Electric Count of Midland about to get in there. And one swipe of those Griffin's Claws will take down one of the Minotaurs. But he has more work to do here. He's pretty much the only thing back here right now that can deal with the Butchers of Kelkengard. And deal with him, he shall. That Griffin is just an absolute monster. I love it. So much mobility, and of course that terror regeneration is extremely good. And another swipe brings down 2, and they're gone. Butchers of Kelkengard are off the field, shattered, and they will not return with those final 2 angry cowmen. But The Halberdiers are still trying to find something to tie down here. A lot more Beastmen on the field, looks like, than the Empire, but Earthblood to keep these Spearmen and Halberdiers fighting out on the left flank, although the battle lines have completely shifted now, and the Lore of Deathcaster is still around, still with Spirit Leech, trying to cast that on the Lore of Lifecaster, and Morghur should be able to, another whip attack, god, it looks so janky and dumb, is gonna kill some of those Empire State Troops. But Boris coming forward now, and the Lore of Deathcaster is completely out of position here. Griffin could chomp through that in about 3 or 4 attacks. He needs support, and he will get it. And the Beastmen are rallying to the Shadowgave as the survivors stream forward, but at the center of everything is the wielder of Legbiter, the Rune Fang of Midland, Mr. Boris Todbringer, and atop that noble beast. What can little goatmen do? Nothing, I say. Faith, steel, gunpowder, and halberds, the most versatile weapon in the history of the planet, will prove too much for the Cloven ones here. And as Boris charges in from the flank, terror routes everywhere, and the Beastmen will be ridden down, screaming back into the heart of the Dreckwald Forest. So, obviously, I haven't had much time to play this matchup, or the Empire in general, since the new patch went live, just to see how they're performing and how they're matching up. And I'm obviously far from being the best Empire player, but in the few matches I've had with them so far, it does seem like all these buffs they've received over the last couple patches are adding up to make quite a nice impact for them, and it's going to be really nice to see ranks of Halberds actually be viable for a change. They've always been a little bit too expensive for what they offer, and it's possible that this buff to them might actually make them kind of worth using instead of just going for the cheapest Empire Spearman you possibly can. Of course, it does mean you'll have less line coverage, but there's a trade-off there for sure. Now, if you give them some chevrons or support them with Empire Captains and hold the line, which was changed to now grant +5 melee defense in an AoE instead of that somewhat useless charge resistance it had before, they can perform really well for you. But as always, they are very susceptible to range attacks and magic because of their tight formations, and they got a lot of kills this game, as did the Reiksguard, who despite Fate of Boring, still made a pretty big impact on the game. Was very happy with the Hellblaster volley gun as well, although the Beastman player did a very good job pressuring my handgunners and limiting their ability to fire, and that was probably the best thing that he did, although some of his Centaurs did get shut down pretty early. But hope you guys enjoyed that. See you next time. Indie Pride, signing out for now.